Welcome to Overtime on Inferno, your weekly roundup of all the big stories in CSGO in less time than it takes you to give us a review on iTunes and follow the pod on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Logan. This is Aizyesque. Let's get into it. We're going to start with the Execute today, which is where we talk about the biggest story of the week, which is that there's kind of actually two stories of the week we want to talk about.
Throw in a flashbang, throw in fire, throw in smoke.
Yeah, but it's all like, it's all big one homogenous glob of story, I think.
All right, so let's talk about the first one, which is we had a little bit of movement this week. Let's start with the Lekr move. Lekr got benched by North when North closes an org a little while ago. Still sad times on that. He's back reunited with Forest, who he played with on NIP. I don't know if this move has any consequence at all.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like Dignitas are just like killing time. Maybe an unfortunate choice of words given the age of their players, but and the name of the org. I don't know. It seems like I think we spoke about them a little bit, and we said, we like the idea of having veterans training up the young kids, but I'm not sure you need the 3 veterans, 2 kids. I think 2 veterans, 3 kids makes more sense, or even 1 veteran, 4 kids. But now you have Forest, Freiburg, and Lekr. I mean, I guess it's some fan service for NIP fans who feel a little bit disheveled and disenfranchised. So it does give them a little bit of a place to go to Dignitas and support them. But the team I like Lekr, but I don't think this is the move that makes them a genuine contender for a top 30 spot. I'd be very surprised. Even though I actually really rate Hulzerk. I think Hulzerk's really, really talented.
It's the Swedish retirement home. I think we put it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
So out of the things that we're talking about today, this is one of the 2 things we've actually guessed was going to happen and gotten correct.
Yeah.
The other thing which we correctly guessed last week, which means the Overtime on Inferno podcast is 100% correct with all of its BS roster speculation, is EG picking up Obo.
Yeah, I think that one was really obvious. I mean, it just makes perfect sense. Obo is the best, only available NACS player. So by default, the best, but he's also pretty good. There is murmurs, not publicly, but there were murmurs that EG were going to make another roster move. Don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think this roster will stay the same, but there was another player who was apparently training with them, but he's not going to join now. But it seems like this will be their 5 going forward. It didn't look like it was going to be, but I think this is about as good as an NA team can be without any of the liquid players. It's Breezy, Obo, Tarek, Stanislaw is the IGL. Like, you can't really ask for much more in terms of raw talent.
And then you've got Cirque, who just literally doesn't miss a shot ever.
Yeah, he's just, sometimes stands in the worst place possible and then tries to hit the flick.
And hits it.
Sometimes. Sometimes he doesn't even get a chance to fire.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, though, what kind of stuff the Obo has in his contract, because we've seen previously with the Complexity lineup that Obo was on, that since that Complexity lineup was in Europe for a while, they stayed there because of COVID, and they were boot camping there, that Obo left because he got homesick, and he's still just a kid, right? So I'm curious to see what EG has in place to kind of help him along on the rest of his career, making sure he doesn't feel homesick and that kind of stuff.
Well, I actually have a lot of experience with homesickness. I actually had to leave a job because of homesickness before. So I know it does pass with time sometimes. Sometimes you're just in a better place mentally and you can deal with it. There's also the fact that he's young and still growing. Maybe he's just sort of, he's got past that. Potentially EG will spend less time in Europe. It looks like, fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever Lucky Jones you want, it looks like the pandemic is slowly coming to an end. So maybe they'll be less inclined to have to stay in Europe for months on end. Because I think that was the real problem, was that he was away from his family for months on the other side of the world. And I think EG will, now everyone knows that, I think EG will be able to deal with that a lot better.
Mm-hmm. And I also think that originally EG was one of the teams that was kind of still in between. They didn't take part in global finals at the end of 2020 because they went back a little bit earlier. I think they've been kind of super on top of their players' mental health about staying in Europe for extended periods of time and not being North America. So
they also have more American players, so it makes more sense for them to be in NA for longer.
You'd think. So that's our 100% speculation. One thing that we did not see coming was formerly the greatest opera in the world, still a very good opera.
MSL.
KennyS.
Oh, sorry, my
Yes,
bad.
MSL, true Danish opera royalty. No, French opping royalty. KennyS was benched from G2. If you don't know the story about what's happened here, Nico came into the team 3 months ago, 2 months ago, somewhere in there, rather recently, and
Everything's falling apart.
G2 was a great team before Nico came in. And then they added Nico to become a better team, and they've just become a worse team.
Yeah, it's kind of strange. I mean, they have been okay. They have been pretty good with Nico at the start. I think there is something in the idea that KennyS actually hasn't been playing particularly well recently. If you look into his stats, if you go onto HLTV and look at his previous performances, he actually hasn't been doing very well, and he is carried a little bit by his name value. How much of that, though, is down to the fact that you have Nico and Hunter? They take up all the space. Nico notoriously takes up a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
How much of that? I mean, if it's down to do you want Nico or do you want KennyS because only one of them can survive in the team, you probably do go Nico. He's the new guy. His peak is obscene. KennyS hasn't been at his peak for a while. He's also been fluttering his eyelids at Valorant and then playing hard to get. I should explain that. There was a rumor that he was going to join a Valorant team. French journalist Nel Indirect, don't know how I'm supposed to pronounce it, said that he would not go to Valorant. He wants to stay in CS. KennyS denied the rumor, even after he posted a GIF from Valorant. He denied the rumor that he was going to go to Valorant. Did say it was a good game, though. But he did say he wanted to stay in CS. And then it seems that he will just stay in CS. He's going to join another team. Nico is going to stay on G2. Jax is back in, which I think is possibly the weirdest part of all of this.
I'd be willing to assume that Jax is a stand-in for a real opper. So when G2 made the announcement, they've said that Nico will be moving to a hybrid rifle op role, which we saw went really well in FaZe for a little while. So
I think if you have Nico, you kind of have to just let him do what he wants.
Yeah. But we've also gone over on this how, like, Nico teams have historically not been very good teams, except for, like, the beginning of FaZe when they had every single, like, living European human that was good at the video game.
That's true. I personally think Nico is an exceptionally talented player, but a player who, for whatever reason, does make some players around, a decent amount of players around him play worse. I think FaZe was the best case scenario for Nico. And we saw how good it can be when you build around him. And then they choked a lot of finals and it all fell apart.
Yeah.
I think G2, I hope Jax, for G2's sake, I hope Jax is a stand-in. Because I like Jax, but I don't think taking out KennyS and putting in Jax turns you from a top 15 team to a top 5 team, which is realistically, when you sign Nico, that's what you have to be. When you're spending this much money on Nico, you have to be a top 5 team. And I don't think minus KennyS plus Jax is what takes you there.
And I don't think they'll survive with a Nico op instead of him on a rifle. Especially with not somebody else on the op in addition to him on the rifle. You're not getting the best use out of Nico if you stick him on the op like all the time.
I should say we used to think that about Simple and Device.
Correct. But Simple has proven us wrong to become the best player in the world, or to contested best player in the world. And Device has become the number one most consistent player in the world, right? Nico hasn't shown, he's picked up the op in phases and he's looked okay on it, but he hasn't looked like Simple or Device on the op.
No, he hasn't. He hasn't. But I think Nico thinks that he is Simple. I think Nico believes, and if you're that good, you have to believe this. I think he believes he's the best player in the world, and he's seeing Simple, Device. I mean, all of the best highest rated players in the world right now are AWPers.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. I think Nico probably sees that and thinks, I want to be the best player in the world. I'm going to war. And to be honest, I kind of respect that. I think in a way he probably should. G2 aren't the best team in the world, and they can't compete with ZywOo. They can't compete with Simple. Who's the only player on G2 who could possibly compete with Simple and ZywOo? You know, even Dexter, players like this, Shiro. It's probably Nico. And as good as he is with a rifle, I think in the current meta of Counter-Strike, I think you just have to have your best player AWPing.
I'm curious to see the replacement for Jax, because they could go two ways. They could go all in on the Nico op. They could say we think that he's gonna do a good job. We think that he's the future of our team in the op role as well as the rifle role and that hybrid role. Or they can go and pick up a more kind of traditional opper, whether that be somebody who rifles on ops or just ops specifically. And I think that move, whatever the move with Jax is, assuming there is a move with Jax, we could be totally wrong and there could be no move with Jax, that's going to kind of push push G2 into how it goes.
MSL. Traditional
opper.
Willing to give up, he will play more passively so Nico and Hunter could do what they want. I'm just saying, he's available.
He's available.
I'm not his agent. Don't message me about MSL. Unless you want to talk about how good he is, in which case I'm willing to engage.
Where do we think KennyS is going? Obviously, he stated that he's not going to Valorant publicly, but where do we think that he is going to end up because of this? We saw a tweet late last week, I believe on Friday, something along the lines of I'm going to announce my signing within the next 24 hours, and he obviously didn't do that. So we're still kind of at a cliffhanger of what he's doing. Are there any teams in the top 30 right now that you think need an opper or need a player like KennyS?
I think he might, the whole Flusher thing. There was the Flusher team. Maybe KennyS will go to that. That seems to make sense to me. You see Flusher and KennyS together as an organization, you already have a fan base if you sign those two. No matter what happens, those two are legendary. You will have Flusher and KennyS on your team. You could put almost anyone around them, and people will probably watch because it's Flusher and KennyS.
It's the Dignitas approach.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But with players who are closer to their prime.
Yeah, you sign two players like Forrest and Get Right, who are 30, and you have a team. And it doesn't matter how good they do, but you make a team and you get a lot of support from people who want to reminisce about the old NIP days. And you'll get these people that want to reminisce about the old Fnatic days and the old KennyS and Envious days when he had blue hair, which was a weird time.
I'd completely erased that from my memory.
I'm so happy I brought it back for you. Let's get into the other quick story of the week. Thorn decided to take on the entire professional Call of Duty community this week. So there was a lot of tweets, and it's really difficult to find a good summary of exactly what happened unless you watch Thorn's 1 hour long video, which I'm not doing. And I don't think anyone... I don't think anyone should do.
Anyone wants to watch. I don't think anyone wants to watch an hour of Thorin complaining about Flashpoint and COD players.
Yeah, that's the other part of this is Thorin decided to quit Flashpoint because they weren't doing as well as they could have. If only he could have done something about it as the creative director of Flashpoint. You really know it's a slow week when we're talking about Thorin on the podcast.
On a more serious note, it is kind of a shame to see Flashpoint seem to fall on its own sword somewhat. They went all in on the Thorin, Monte Cristo, all controversy all the time. All they Thorin talked about how he wanted to mimic like pay-per-view wrestling and stuff. It was all a bit odd to me. I didn't really get it. I don't really like Thorin and Monte Cristo as a duo. I find them very irksome and arrogant. I mean, I want to talk, obviously, but I found it very difficult to get him engaged in Flashpoint. But it is a shame to see it fail because that failing cannot be good for CS:GO esports. It can't be because even if it was just tier 2 teams, which it was in season 1, in season 2 it birthed Virtus Pro's sort of revival, which was pretty cool. But yeah, it has to be bad for the scene to see something like this fall. It hasn't fallen yet, but Thorin leaving might signal the end. It might signal the beginning of something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
All I know is that I'm not going to watch 1 hour of Thorin talking about it, especially when the video is titled something like "Broken Promises." You're not a 14-year-old girl, dude.
It's all caps. Yeah, and a lot of the Flashpoint like content around Flashpoint was actually very good. They had that like bar setting at the end of the weekend or something with Maui Snake and Monte Cristo and Potter and one or two other people there drinking and talking about the rest of the what happened throughout the weekend. And that was a really nice piece of content that they did. I don't remember if it was every night or at the end of the tournament or at the end of the groups. We got like they've done some very good things, and I'm curious to see where it continues from here. If it completely flops now that Thorne's left, or what happens with there. What we would like to do now is introduce something new to the podcast, which is Aizyesque dramatically reading tweets.
Just stupid tweets from people within esports. And obviously the theme of today is Thorin, so I would like to read this tweet of Thorin talking about Call of Duty players. Call of Duty is so utterly bereft of self-awareness that people legitimately spent 10 minutes in YouTube videos wondering why someone would waste their time posting a throwaway joke that took 5 seconds to think up. No wonder these morons need help aiming. And that is, of course, a reference to aim assist in Call of Duty, something which CSGO's, the CSGO superiority complex. We don't have aim assist, so we just shit on anyone who does. My personal favorite Thorin tweet of all time, however, is there's so much bullshit and so many liars in the League of Legends scene. Unlucky for them, I am their reckoning. Everybody loses in war, but you lose more. Understand that's the motto every time you come at me.
I'm pretty sure that's a Sun Tzu quote.
I thought it was a Bullet for My Valentine lyric.
Okay, it definitely could be that too. The thing about the original tweet that I really want to put out is the people legitimately spend 10 minutes in YouTube videos. I'm wondering if he thinks that that's too low of a time or too high of a time.
Given he just put out an hour-long video on leaving Flashpoint, 10 minutes in videos doesn't seem like that long.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Let's move on to some listener mail. We asked you guys on Twitter and Discord what you guys wanted us to answer this week, because it's a really slow week in Counter-Strike news.
And feel free next week to send us more questions, because it could be on anything. Absolutely anything. I will answer anything. I'm putting that out there.
We're going to start answering a couple questions at the end of every single episode, 1 or 2 really quickly. So send your questions in and we will answer them. But we got a bunch today. So the first from Davscal on Twitter. If you were the NIP sports manager and you could go back in time and override one decision, what would it be?
That is a great question. I really should have thought about this before I came on. Hang on. We'll cut this bit out. If I were the NIP sports manager, and presumably esports manager, I would never have signed Twist, because Nork was always available, and Nork is basically just a better, younger version of Twist.
I mean, I can't argue that.
No, but Davscal will, I promise you.
Okay. To be honest, I question a little bit the flipping between offers every 5 minutes in the early years of NIP, but obviously that worked out pretty well for them. So there's not a huge amount there to question for me. A lot of the newer decisions, you kind of have to wonder what happened there, especially what you're saying, the Twist stuff about having him and Knock on the same team for a while. But I mean, there's other teams that have way bigger question marks that we would point to first before I would point to NIP on some of these things.
Absolutely.
All right. So from Clueless Huanchi, What are some players that we wonder how they got where they are?
We've already mentioned him today, but I still don't think it's ever been explained why Cirque is on Evil Geniuses. Like, why is there just a teenage Bulgarian on an NA team and nobody questions it? How did he get there? Did he live in America before?
I don't know.
I didn't know Cirque before he was on NRG. Was he in NA playing? I've just got so many questions.
I think there's like a conspiracy theory going around this. And if there isn't, we definitely need to make a conspiracy theory.
I don't know. Like, it's never brought up. It's like, oh yeah, no, Cirque, he's the Bulgarian guy on the NA team. Of course he is. Why is he there? How is he there? I mean, obviously he's skillful enough. I'm not questioning that, but how does a Bulgarian end up on an American team?
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really, really good one. And that's taken all of mine out of my head. I have no, like...
Well, the other answer is obviously Smooyar on Movistar. How the hell has that happened?
Naf on Renegades back a couple years ago.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that happened.
Naf and Nifty on Renegades.
Oh, God. But people used to think Nifty was the better of those two as well.
Oh, yeah. That was strange. I've talked about Nifty being an opera on this podcast already, but Naf is undoubtedly statistically the better player out of the two. There's no question there. All right. From Tamo, your top sex tips.
Don't have it till marriage.
Okay, we'll continue on.
I'm not married, so I don't have any other tips. Sorry.
A pressed cardboard, which, okay, quick sidebar. We talked about this before. We need more information on this name. Is this like a default Xbox gamer tag? Like,
I think it has to be. Like, his name on Xbox is like a pressed cardboard 43.
Yeah.
It has to have been.
Yeah. Okay. So his question is, what should North have done to remain relevant and continue to be a top Danish team? Before Easy goes on this, what do you mean by remain a top Danish team?
All right, man. All right. Come on. I'm standing right. I'm sitting right here. I'm not standing up.
No.
Do if you keep talking.
Understandable. Please give your way better opinion on this than mine, because you've been watching North for the last while.
I think one of the big issues was losing Valde. I mean, obviously. I don't know how you would have convinced Valde to stay. I think he was probably tired with everything. I guess the only answer would have been to somehow pluck like a Glaive. Maybe it was to go all in on Cadian. I think actually that's probably a good answer. As much as I love MSL, we've seen what Cadian can do with new talent on Heroic. Potentially it was give Cadian more reins. I don't know why he didn't work on North, but he works so well on Heroic. I mean, he looks like a better individual player as well as a better leader on Heroic. So that's a decision that I've always kind of regretted every time I watch Heroic. I'm like, why did Cadian not quite click on North? Maybe it's the players were so used to MSL's calling that when he tried to change it, it was like, oh, you know, this is what it was like under MSL. I don't know. I'm just sort of spitballing. But that's a decision I've always sort of wondered what if about.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. They had Nico and Cadian at the same time, which Nico and Cadian were on Heroic for about a year with each other in this last year before Nico moved on to possibly OG. They still haven't done anything with that. But you saw that Heroic became a top tier team with Cadian IGLing and with Nico in that team. So you had 2 of the 5 players there already. And if you could have gotten some of your own Danish talent, you saw how Heroic did it with their own Danish talent. That's definitely one of the better ways to do it. I don't have enough North knowledge to answer this question. I was gonna say something stupid about like Rubino, but I don't have enough.
I'm not getting into that. We don't have an hour.
All right. So from Messi to United, if Cloud9 were to make a move, what player would you want brought in, and subsequently who should be dropped?
I will never stop saying this. Somebody good should sign Malbs MD. I'm 100% serious. The guy is cracked. He's absolutely insane. Like, I promise you, he's insane. Somebody just pay like whatever. It's not going to be expensive. He plays for Team One. He's cracked. I promise you to sign him. Other than that, I mean, I think KennyS would actually fit in quite well there. That's quite an obvious one.
Yeah, that was my answer. They're missing an opper right now. They've got Esatag opping, which thank God for them making that switch. It hasn't done anything good for them yet, but just to make our hearts a little bit like less broken. Thank you for making that switch. But yeah, they need an opper. KennyS is an opper. There's a lot of young people on that team. There's definitely room for having somebody who can just kind of play at a decent level, and not have to be fluctuating all the time. And I think I think that would be a good pickup anyway. As per who would be taken out, I'd assume Mezzy, but
it's really difficult on who to drop. I've discussed this before, I think, on Twitter, and I think it's very difficult to find somebody to drop. I think Floppy has to stay because I think he's one of the cheaper members of the squad and one of the better players.
Yeah, I think Floppy and Esatag are the two best players on that squad. And
see, I came to the conclusion that maybe Esatag's the one who goes because you can't cut Alex or Floppy. Zeppa is the new guy. Mm-hmm. Mezzy is like the fifth player, and I always think changing the fifth player is a fruitless endeavor. You're only ever replacing the support player. That's not going to make you a much better team instantly, unless you're already really good, which, let's face it, Cloud9 aren't. And that just leaves Esatag, who is supposed to be the star player on this team, but rarely puts up the numbers of a star player. Mm-hmm. The only argument I could see against it is that you cut, or you make Zeppa the sixth man and get another star in over the top of Esatag, which maybe KennyS would be. But Esatag should be the second star if you really want to be a top 10 team. He shouldn't be your best player. Floppy as like your third best player, it's pretty solid. You can't really have any complaints about that. But if he's your second best player, you're probably not a top 10 team. So I think you have to cut. I guess maybe you make Zeppa the sixth man and rotate him in and out, and then get a genuine superstar if you really want to elevate this team. Pay them what you paid Woxic.
Yeah. All right. From Merkio on our Discord. By the way, if you're not in our Discord, join the Discord. It's a fun time. It's a lot of shit talking. He wants our opinion on what esports in general is lacking comparatively to like more mainstream sports, and how it can kind of get rid of it's just video games kind of stereotype. That's a very long question on its own.
The answer is time. When we're older and the people listening to this podcast have children of their own, maybe have grandchildren, they will have grown up with video games being video games are mainstream now. Like I think that's pretty definitive, certainly in most countries. A lot of people play some variation of a video game. My dad actually plays a lot of video games, but I know that's quite unusual. When we have children, or when our generation has children, those children will be more accustomed to seeing video games, to playing video games, to video games being a mainstay in society, which the other generation aren't. So the people who grew up watching NBA are not suddenly going to go, oh, this League of Legends thing looks really cool, or this Counter-Strike thing looks really cool. It's quite unlikely, really, in the same vein that a lot of CSGO players aren't watching Valorant because they grew up watching and playing CSGO. Mm-hmm. I think in 20, 30 years, esports will rival the NBA because everyone can play video games. It doesn't matter. There are some. There's often the thing about female gamers, women in esports, maybe facing unfair criticism, abuse. That does exist. I'm not going to say it doesn't. But behind a computer screen, it kind of doesn't matter who you are. you can just
If
play
you can
video
play,
games.
yeah, if you can play, you can play. And to go on with that, I've watched LCS, the League Championship Series, in my den while eating dinner right on our TV, and my dad's come down and he's watched with me. But it's like he'll ask me questions and stuff because you have no clue what's going on unless you play the game or something like that. Especially with League, which is the world's biggest esport.
Yeah.
TM. Especially like with something like that there's a million things going on at any given time and you've got no clue what you're following unless you play the game. You're never going to get into that unless you've played the game, so you're never going to get the like 30 plus demographic that has never played League of Legends or has never played Counter-Strike or something like that.
But that's why I think with time it will get better, because everyone will have played. Like, certainly I'm from England, right? And pretty much everyone, I know, pretty much everyone my age, male, usually, has played FIFA or COD. Like, loads of people will have played it at some point. Those two things are esports. And you can, maybe FIFA have done a good job of advertising their esport within the game. You get like rewards for watching, and it's the same for League of Legends. But that's like a gateway into esports. And then if you play another game, you might be interested to see who the best players in the world are, what they do. That's something that I'm used to. Whenever I play a new game, I look up, right, what the good players do that I don't. And that's sort of how you get into esports. And I think with time, that becomes more apparent to more people who play more video games.
Yeah. So the TLDR answer, Merkio, is give it a couple years. And by a couple, we mean like
maybe 20,
like a while, but it'll get there. As long as it doesn't die before that point, it'll get there. Because there's always the question of running out of funding and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we just saw North close. There's possibilities that it, like, unfortunately, saddeningly, does die before that point. But given enough time, it will just become organically that big. From Taken, also on our Discord, what's our final goal with the TLDR brand, and what's our end goal for this project? I have no clue. I have zero good answers.
The end goal is to become millionaires.
Yep.
So one thing we would like to do, obviously, in the future is to branch into other games. But we can't do that until we know that this works.
Yeah.
And we have a real a base
following
to work off.
Yeah.
And for that, we also need to be profitable. So the sort of joke about being millionaires, it was a joke, but at the same rate, if we don't see it as being profitable, then it's not something we'll be able to carry on doing. One thing we do want to do this year is to improve the image of everyone who works for us. Obviously, I have my own brand, as it were. That sounds so weird to say. And I obviously got work from it, but people like Naps, people like Logan, people like Nova as well, who does all the graphics, really talented guy. We want all these people to have their own brand and maybe get work off it, because that's a way that we can show off how talented the people that work for us are.
Yeah. All right. From Jogler, what's the state of counter? What?
Joel Jer, I think his name's Joel.
Oh, Joelger. Okay, yeah, I'm really good at reading. I took 3 takes of the intro earlier. We're fine. What's the state of CS Twitter right now from when we first started to where it is now? Who's getting top 4 in the Prem, which I assume is the Premier League? And how many death threats have you gotten in your DMs from people thinking that you're AZ and being upset about a bet?
So the first one, it sounds so weird to talk about CS Twitter as like a homogenous thing.
I mean, you're a part of CS Twitter. You are a mainstay of CS Twitter, so it's kind of weird for you to talk about yourself in that way. I
think it used to be something that I was very much just, everyone was just joking with each other. It was very carefree. And then all of a sudden, due to Don Haji, I believe it's Haji, He had a lot of followers, started retweeting us. A lot of us got famous. KennyS ended up becoming a streamer, and I think now it's a little bit more everyone's trying to just be famous. But then a lot of us have got work from like CS Twitter, which is again a really odd thing for me to say out loud. Brian obviously now works with Face It and works with us a little bit.
Hold up, quick message on that. Brian has gotten his own HLTV page.
Oh God, do we have to? Oh man, I think it's time that I get my own. I think it's really strange. Like everyone who was famous now has either left or I say famous, you know what I mean. Infamous is probably more accurate, or now works within esports to some extent, which is kind of odd. Top 4 in the Premier League. I mean, obviously, Man City are going to win the league. They've been the best team in the league for the last 5 years. I think even last year they were probably about as good as Liverpool. Liverpool just got a little bit luckier with injuries and finishing luck. I'm a big football stats guy, so I'm very big on Manchester City. And then I do think Chelsea will finish third. I think the ability in their squad is just obscene, especially now Werner and Havertz are looking a little bit more settled. Fourth is a coin flip, probably Man United. There's no team around the top 4 who I actually want to finish in the top 4. As long as it's not Aston Villa, that's fine. I guess Spurs is who I would like, but I think it will probably be Manchester United. I don't think West Ham quite have the legs to finish there. I don't get many death threats. It's more people asking if I'm AZ, or are you the real AZ, or they'll message thinking that I'm AZ, and I'm like, you've got the wrong guy.
The segue from one to the other right there was just cannot be beaten.
He has 3 questions in one tweet. I've got to, I don't get many death threats, but my DMs are open. So
our last thing, which is from me to the audience, I'm going to throw up a poll on my Twitter. Go answer, and we'll talk about it in the next episode. Spacebar v scroll bar. Scroll wheel, not scroll bar. Scroll wheel. I think I'm the only human left on planet Earth that still uses the spacebar.
I'm spacebar. Team spacebar.
Okay. Apparently, we are the 2 only humans left on Earth that use the spacebar.
It's a big button. Of course, it means jump. What else would it mean?
Exactly. What was it? Well, okay. In some games, it means combat roll, and that's understandable.
Combat roll?
I don't remember what game I was playing, but you couldn't jump.
I have no idea what game you were playing.
I have no clue. But big button. I like big button. So I'm curious to see like how many people say that we're wrong, but like
if you ask me,
we're wrong or we're right.
Scroll wheel is obviously for changing guns because it's on the mouse where you fire and zoom. This makes sense.
Yeah. All right, let's get into overtime, which is our weekly section of headlines. 3 quick pieces. So first of all, Sunny was the top-rated player in the first 2 maps that he's been playing with Fun Plus Phoenix. When in his first win with the team, he means that he's had a 11 match losing streak, 10 of them being on Ents.
He had an 11 match personal losing streak, including 1 game on FPX, 10 with Ents, but he broke it by going plus 22 against Renegades. And look, baby steps, but at least they beat Renegades.
Yeah,
it's a good sign.
Yeah, and so for 2 hours last night, so Monday night or Tuesday morning, depending where you were, Steam got taken off of CSGO got taken off of Steam, and Reddit started questioning things and theorizing that Source 2 was coming out right then at that given moment, and then like 20 minutes later, it came back and everyone shut up about it, and it was a very weird 20 minutes.
It was a Riot Games psyop.
And because we didn't talk about it earlier, Cloud9 lost to Voivoda.
Obviously.
I believe that was DreamHack Open qualifiers, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah. DreamHack
Yeah.
Open. DreamHack Summer, I think. I will just check. DreamHack Masters Spring 2021.
Yeah. Voivoda made up of players that you actually might know, like Victor and Bubble, and some other Bulgarians.
Dreamer. I think he was on Wendigo as well.
But yeah, a couple of people from that Wendigo team that did okay a couple majors ago.
They also beat OG, which is seemingly gone under the radar. That's OG with Nico, who was standing in. Valde went plus 20, dropped 71 kills over 3 maps, and they still lost. Valde's just cursed, I think.
We like to talk about how C9 are losing, so like I wasn't even planning on bringing up OG there.
I quite enjoy talking about OG losing as well.
I mean, I'm not gonna blame you for liking to talk about OG losing, especially because Valde left North to go to OG, and now they're still losing.
I just think this team had a lot of unnecessary hype. It's actually quite sad because I quite like Valde. I've always rated Issa, even if he's been a little bit disappointing on this iteration of the roster. And I quite like Mantu because he chose to have a great British flag, even though a lot of people claim that he's Polish. So I actually quite like the roster, but it's always fun to see an underdog win.
Yeah.
Shout out Voivoda.
I believe 2 rounds in a row, Alex killed Esatag with the help of Victor. Yeah, that would be a team kill 2 rounds in a row with the same person on the other team assisting, which is ridiculous and stupid. But that's going to be it for this week. Please make sure to follow us on Twitter at ReadTLDR, at Logan Ramhap, and at AZS. We will see you guys again next week.
Ciao.
We're going with Chow this time.
We are going with Chow.
We're going with Chow this time.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, it's Logan. Thanks for listening to Overtime on Inferno. If you can follow and review us on your favorite podcast player, we're going to choose a lucky reviewer to shout out on the next episode. And if you have any feedback at all, please email me at logan@readtldr.gg. We love hearing feedback from our listeners.